We move on to the third and the final big conversation point tonight here on the Urban Debate, and it's a debate over uniform divorce laws, which essentially also reignited the debate about uniform civil code. Now, why are we talking about it today? The Supreme Court took up a case, a plea that's been filed seeking uniformity in the kind of laws that we have for divorce and even for alimony and maintenance. Now, while expressing great caution, the Supreme Court did agree to at least examine the plea. They've issued notice to the centre to hear what it is that the petitioners have to say. It's a three-judge bench of the Supreme Court comprising Chief Justice of India along with Justice Bopanna and Ramasubramani. And while, of course, they were having the conversation, there were interesting points raised, including whether or not the court should even approach on and get into a topic which is to do with personal laws. Now, as you know, viewers, in our country, we have personal laws dictated by faiths, different religions. And people who follow those religions can actually marry, inherit as per these laws, and divorce as per these laws. Now, what is it that the plea is seeking? The plea actually is asking the court to remove the anomalies that exist in divorce laws, that they should be common for all citizens. And if there is discrimination that's happening, you look at those discriminatory grounds which are violative of Article 14, 15 and 21. And the plea in fact goes on to give several examples to then say that these laws are not gender neutral, neither are they religion neutral. Of course they're not religion neutral, but they're not even gender neutral. How are they different? I want to give you some examples. For example, if you consider divorce and adultery as grounds for divorce, let's start with that one. If you consider the grounds for divorce, is adultery a ground for divorce? For Hindus, yes. For Christians, yes. For Parsis, yes. For Muslims, no. Incurable leprosy, is that a ground for divorce? For Hindus, yes. Christians, yes. Parsis and Muslims, no. Impotency, is that a ground for divorce? For Hindus, Muslims, yes, but not for Christians and Parsis. Underage marriage, this was actually one surprising one for me also. It is a ground for divorce for Hindus, not so much for Christians, Parsis or Muslims. So that's how there are so many differences. So let's tonight again ask this question. Should the court or the government look at these laws concerning divorce, concerning alimony, or indeed look at all of the personal laws and bring in a uniform code for all? How do you decide? And this is a question at some point the Supreme Court may have to look at. How do you decide whose code has to be followed? Of which religion? Let's say good evening to the panelists who are joining us right now. Sanjay Hegde, Senior Advocate with the Supreme Court. Mrinalini Deshmukh, Lawyer with the Bombay High Court. Mr. John Dayal, Secretary General of the All India Christian Council. Dr. Tasleem Ahmad Rahmani, President of the Muslim Political Council. Rajiv Pandey, spokesperson for the BJP. But first up, I actually want to go across to Pinky Anand, Senior Advocate with the Supreme Court, former ASG. Thank you so much, Pinky Anand, for being with us. Let's begin with why the need to go to the court with this plea. What is it that we are hoping to achieve?
Tanvi, what we are hoping to achieve, or the petition hopes to achieve, and that's what the petition was filed under Article 32, is to inform, basically advise on the best practices and adoption of the best practices across board. The idea is that today we do demand in a civil society that you have the best practices for purposes of divorce. You have that across board. It doesn't matter which religion is adopted and which is not. The issue is not of religion. The issue is that today in a civil society you have certain norms, and that is what is expected to be followed. And this, of course, comes also directly on the feet of Shaira Banu's judgment, which held certain practices to be antithetical to human society and to civil society. That is the entire basis. This petition basically demands the best practices and uniform grounds of divorce across all people. It doesn't matter which religion you belong to. It doesn't matter which community you belong to. The idea is you should have the norms as established in civil society, and that's all that one is looking for. And from time to time, of course, there have been changes in laws. So since it is not happening, it is something which needs to be demanded, A. And B, the second ground is that of discrimination. How can you have laws which are not gender neutral? How can you have practices which are anti-women? How can you have something which is discriminating against communities between each other? And this is the same thing that was frowned upon by the Supreme Court in Shaira Bano. Triple Talaq was struck down on this ground that it doesn't matter. It is not an essential practice. It is not something which needs protection under Article 13. And if you follow the mandate of the fundamental rights under Article 14, 15, 21, 39, and 44, then you have to comply with the mandate of the Constitution. You must have it today. And by the way, who is ultimately looking for the empowerment, if you like, of women? Who is it that is looking at the improvement and the pragmatism of laws? It is, in addition to the government, it is the Supreme Court that is looking into it.
Yes, absolutely. I would say it is the courts more than the governments, for more often than not. Yes, but let me ask you this question. I was reading, and it's been widely reported, the conversation that happened in the court during the hearing, and I was reading a part of that conversation where the Chief Justice of India asked you, you want abolishment of personal laws, and you said no. And then he went on to say, you're not saying...
No.
It doesn't mean that that's not the reality, because you're asking us to encroach upon personal laws and remove the distinction that they create. At which point, Pinky Anand, and you raised it right now also, you're asking for the discriminatory practices to be removed. Can you give us a couple of examples? What discriminatory practices are you referring to?
Let us take, for example, underage. And the question is, underage marriages per se are considered discriminatory and against the interests of women. That is a gender issue as far as it stands. And today's society, in each of these issues, whether it's Juvenile Act, whether it is a criminal procedure code, every one of these provisions has been interpreted in a context that you cannot have underage people being compromised. Today, you have underage, if you get married underage, it is something that is frowned upon under all laws. However, it is a ground of divorce in one of the religions. It is not a ground in other religions. Now, that is something which is, forget the fact that it is qua one religion or the other. The point it is something that is unacceptable in civil society. And that is not only on the ground of law, it is also on the ground of health. So if you have that as a concept, how can you continue to have such practices being allowed and something not being available? The idea, for example, of underage being a ground for divorce is that to discourage young children from being coerced into marriage and being made to suffer for the rest of their lives on various counts, including in particular health.
Okay, fair enough. Let me take that point, yes, and take it across. Yes, go ahead, please finish your point. I think we lost your line there. Yes, go ahead, Pinky.
Yes, no, that's the only point I was making. So just as an example, as I say, underage is something which is considered bad per se. So it has nothing to do with any religion, any other precept, excepting for civil society precept. If you take that into account, as I said, for example, take triple talaq. Why was triple talaq struck down? Triple talaq was struck down because it was something that was unacceptable in civil society. And it could not have, of course, the protection of religion, because only essential practices, if at all, can be protected under Article 25 and 26. So if something is bad, it's bad and needs to be struck down. The same thing applies as far as any principle is concerned. That, as you rightly said, is something that I had argued before the Supreme Court to say, you struck down the triple talaq law on the ground that it is discriminatory. It is against the interest of women. So, well, if something is against the interest of women, it should be struck down.
Okay, so let me take that point up and say this. Okay, so why not then, Sanjay Hegde, look at a set of laws, personal laws essentially, which are the best practices, and then say that everybody must follow this. I mean, just like there is an example of underage marriage, there should be an example of even adultery. Adultery is also not, if I am not mistaken, not a cause for, not a ground for divorce across all religions and personal laws. Shouldn't it be? Should we look at a uniform code then?
See, all this talk of a uniform civil code is essentially a dog whistle for imposing one code.
Yeah.
No matter what Pinky says, that is the messaging which goes across. Point one. Point two, essential religious practice.
It doesn't matter what the
What is an essential religious practice? Pinky, I don't appreciate being interrupted. You want to have your say? Please go ahead. So the second point is an essential religious practice. marriage, for instance, in Islamic law is a contract. In Hindu and in Christian law, it's a sacrament. Now, if you interfere with Muslims marrying through contract, then a whole set of consequences follows. The divorce provisions are also in accordance with what is essential religious belief in Islam as far as marriage is concerned. You raise the question of adultery. Adultery is not condoned by any religious laws. However, the concept of adultery in Hinduism would be one, that is, you have one wife and you are in a relationship with another or more. In Islam, for instance, there can be more than one wife.
Yeah.
That has not been struck down. There are several various factors with regard to all human transactions which are largely rooted in religion. Maybe one religion, maybe another. The question is, if you say that, okay, this one particular line of thought is perfect, a large section of society has already adopted it, why don't we implement it on everybody? That is essentially the argument which is being made out. It has found flavor with the times, but democracy is not essentially about majorities alone. Democracies or working a constitution is about carrying everybody together.
No, I agree with you.
Let me be an equal opportunity offender. Why should we restrict marriages only between man and woman? Why, if you say let's have same-sex marriages,
Yeah.
both the zealots on both sides will equally be aggrieved. I wish that somebody starts first saying, okay, let's have a uniform civil code which allows all human beings to marry.
Yeah. Fair enough. I agree with you.
And
let all laws be gender neutral as well.
And once that is established, let us then see whether when one significant minority accepts it, let us see whether other minorities also accept it.
Okay, but is it more about giving the right to people to follow their own religion and their faith, or is it more, Mrinalini Deshmukh, about saying, let's bring in a good set of laws? It's 2020 we're talking about. The law should be the same for all, and it should be gender neutral to begin with.
So yes, at the outset, let me make it very clear, whatever may be the political views of A party or B party, I'm not here representing any of them. This I'm talking to you as a lawyer and who's been practicing this law for the last 2 decades. Now, having said this, I think let's understand one thing. The origin of the Uniform Civil Code is in Article 44 of the Constitution of India, which is the directive principles. It was discussed at the time where the Constitution was being framed that this is something that they initially wanted to make it a fundamental thing, but then they said, let's make it a directive principle because that would lead to good governance, which is there. So if the framers of our Constitution found that to be an essential part of the Constitution, I'm sure there's much more to it than some petty politics or any political agenda of A or B or C party. That's point number one. Point number two is, and let us understand one thing, it is not, you asked a question to Pinky earlier, then which code would be an ideal code for this? I mean, is anybody trying to push in some agenda? The answer to that is, if you were to ask me this question, let's take the Special Marriage Act. Let's make that as a basic role model or a code, which is irrespective of your religion, irrespective of whether you're a citizen or not a citizen, and that is a law applicable. And make that as a uniform code as far as the Civil Code of Marriage and Divorces are concerned. Thirdly, and more importantly, yes, it would be gender neutral. Yes, it would lead to some kind of sort of uniformity, which is much required, whether in terms of divorce, custody, maintenance, alimony, succession, inheritance, etc. And lastly, and more importantly, please let's understand that this Uniform Civil Code is not for a particular religion or against a particular religion. In fact, in 1975, Justice Chandrachud had made this suggestion when he was dealing with the case in 1970 about maintenance to be given to Shahbanu's case to be given to a Muslim woman, where she was going from pillar to post to ask for maintenance, and her husband had given her talaq. And that is the point of time. Justice Chandrachud, that is the father of the present judge of the Supreme Court, Y.V.
Yes.
Chandrachud, has said that why not think about in such a manner? Why should such women be? So it is not about a community. It is not about anything. It's more about gender, to give equality more to women. I don't know whether that's fair or unfair to give women more rights, but this is basically the way I look at it, and why I'm advocating it is only it brings about uniformity, it's gender neutral, and it is also helping some marginalized sections of the women who otherwise are sort of compromised because of certain religious beliefs and customs which is there. But it nowhere says that you cannot follow your religion. If I'm a Muslim, I will be allowed to follow my religion. So as also Christian,
Okay.
Parsi.
All right. So let's say
Where
this.
is it? Where is the axe on my faith or on my religion?
Okay, so let me just take it point to another aspect that I want to ask everyone. And Dr. Taslim Rahmani, let me ask you that question. Rather than saying together, let's look at a uniform set of divorce laws and alimony and maintenance, should we look at it individually? For example, the way we dealt with triple talaq, and all aspects of triple talaq were, debated and argued upon in court to decide whether it's good in law, whether, it justifies what was said earlier, that it's part of the religion, it's prescribed in Islam. Similarly, for other problematic existing laws, should we look at them individually or together, Dr. Rahmani?
You see, the triple talaq verdict from the Supreme Court of India was well in accordance with the Muslim personal law. There is no discrepancy between the Muslim personal law and the verdict delivered by the Honorable Supreme Court regarding this triple talaq. So this one thing must be understood very clearly, that there was no difference between the verdict and the Muslim personal law. Secondly, I want to emphasize that this concept of one nation, one law, and the one nation and one culture, and the no discrimination, gender discrimination, etc., etc. Particularly the present, the government, the ruling class, which is promoting this slogan with much vociferously. That is not the idea of India actually. The beauty of India and the very fabric of India is does lie in existence on diversity. So there will be diversity on the religious basis, on the cultural basis, on the basis of belief and traditions, etc., etc. We have so many differences between the north to south and east to west, whether it is the weather or the geography or the culture or the tradition or the religion, etc. We cannot at any cost deny this diversity amongst our society. Secondly, I want to ask Ms. Pinky Anand what she mean by when she say the civil society. She said it is not about religion, it is not about the personal law, it is about the civil society. What are the confinement of the civil society? We are a society belonging to various cultures, various religions, various beliefs. So what is the harm if some group of the society is believing one aspect of belief?
Okay.
And the other, there are LGBT, there are Muslims, there are Hindus, there are Sikhs, there are Christians, and there is another special marriage acts, etc. Everybody is at liberty to follow whatever they want to follow. So why there is a problem? And if you are talking about any UCC, then okay, let it come. I always maintain that there must be a blueprint of what that UCC will be. Let the country discuss and debate on that blueprint. Then only we can decide whether the UCC is acceptable to the country or not.
Okay, Dr.
For last
Rahmani, let me get a
75 years,
response.
we are demanding and waiting for such kind of a blueprint. And there is nothing like that.
Let me get a response from Pinky Anand, please.
Yes, I would like to respond. I mean, I have a few things to say here. Firstly, when I say civil society...
Would you want to hear a Christian point of view?
Mr. John Dal, I'm coming to you next because this was a question directly to her. I am bringing you in as a panelist, but just 1 minute, please. Yes.
So when I say civil society, I mean a society which is pragmatic, which is progressive, and which has done away with practices that are antithetical to human behavior and to human existence. A. B. I do want to mention at this point, even though it's not a ground of divorce or any such thing, but nonetheless, adultery has been done away by the Supreme Court in a constitutional judgment, whereas it was pleaded. In fact, I was pleading for the government at that point of time that adultery is something which is considered to be an anti-state situation and therefore punishable as an offense. Nonetheless, that was declined by saying it is something that cannot be accepted because women cannot be accepted as chattels. Coming back to respond to what the situation is here, the question is not your beliefs. The question is what is ultimately an essential part of religion and what can be protected, which is what the law of this country says. But what is not an essential ground of life or religion is something which cannot be protected. Divorce is something that is mandated by law, by the state, and therefore it is something which comes under that purview. This is not even marriage, this is divorce. Now, please tell me any answer to this. How can an underage girl who is forced to marry
More bigger than that. I'm sorry, the religion is not about the ways of worship. It's much more than that. That's what I want to emphasize, and I want to know it very clearly.
You may emphasize anything, no problem. But at the same time, how can an underage marriage be good for a child? Whether it is, of course, in this case, it would be a girl. How could it be good for that? We today have to realize one thing, as I said. You, for example, didn't have irretrievable breakdown as a ground for marriage. It came in the Special Marriage Act. It came in the Hindu Marriage Act. It was brought in because there was a demand for it. That is something that
there is already a stated law for that. That is already an illegal marriage. The underage marriage is already, sir, underage marriage is already an illegal marriage in the country without any discrimination of any religion. So don't bring the underage marriage into this debate. It is already an illegal thing. Underage marriage.
All right, let her give her another example.
About the religion. It is about the civil laws of the society.
Impotency.
So don't dilute this debate with such kind of irrelevant things.
Please don't tell me what is irrelevant. What about incurable leprosy? What about impotency? These are grounds for divorce? They are not. Why should they not be? Let us answer this. It doesn't matter which religion it belongs to. Please don't make this into a religion caste situation.
In Islam, in Islam, the will of a woman is enough ground for a divorce. In Islam, even the will of a woman is enough ground for divorce.
Yes.
No reason is required. The will of a woman is enough ground for divorce in Islam.
You're proclaiming it is not going to get anywhere. You do know that there are restrictions.
Okay, let me bring in other views. I have two more panelists to go. So may I just come in here and bring in other views as well?
So therefore, just Tavleen.
Yeah.
Tavleen, just 1 minute. The Supreme Court also, while considering majority of issues, in fact, Justice Deepak Mishra, as far as I recall, specifically held that, let us take Goa as an example. You have something which prevails in all parts of the country, prevails upon as an equal society, even brings an equitable distribution of wealth between husband and wife as a ground in a dissolution. Why can't we look at it? Why should we not have a position which equates gender neutral situations across board? Why can't we have practices that are best practices across? That is all that is being ultimately argued. Whether it is coming from one or the other is not the issue in hand.
As long as it's the best practice, why can't we have that instead of some of the old dated ones? Dr. Rahmani, you will have to allow me to go across to John Dayal and then Rajiv Pandey because they've patiently waited. John Dayal also needs to bring in, make his comment here, Mr. Dayal. What's wrong in saying let's have a set of laws which are best practices across religion?
I will not demand equal time, but I will make 3 very brief points in about a minute and a half. My first point is a ridiculous point. Why only in marriage first we have uniform codes? Why not in taxation law? Why do you have the Hindu undivided family and not the Muslim undivided family and the Christian undivided family? And give us a little bit of a tax break. That was my first point. Why do we only want to purge marriage laws from a religious connotation? Why not Article 341, Part 3 on the SC status to people who are Muslims, who are Christians, and not just to Hindus? and Sikhs only if they're deemed to be Hindus. Having disposed of that aspect, let me come to the second point, not so ridiculous. What is wrong with the Meghalaya system of matrilineal life, where the property vests in the daughter? What is wrong? Such a lovely thing. As a father of a daughter, I totally commend it, although I'm not from Meghalaya. I totally commend. Why not that? And now let me get you a little bit of history. I was part of the Christian team, which was, let us say, negotiating with the great Prime Minister, Shri Atal Bihari Vajpayee, when he and others brought up this issue in a big way, much bigger than this petition. And we asked him, sir, we'll be very happy to consider if you'll tell us, purely in a very draft, very general way, what is your idea of a common or a uniform civil code. It is 20 years we haven't heard a word from the BJP on what is their idea. So therefore, my contention is as follows. Underage, dowry or no dowry, all those things are issues of religious reforms. Those who are not there will get there. Christians at one stage could marry first cousins. In India, they never marry up to the seventh cousin, a practice from the Hindus. They have a good practice that they have adopted, keeps inbreeding from happening. They've adopted that. Other good practices Hindus have adopted. As you know, the widow remarriage, for instance, they adopt from others. These are issues of religious reforms. Otherwise, please put before us a draft and we will give you our views as citizens, as civil society, and as followers of Christianity.
So in a way you're saying, Mr. Dayal, that let's look at a uniform set of laws? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying
across
that.
the board,
No.
not just limited to divorce or alimony?
No. I'm going a bit further. Because if you're having a set of laws, a cherry picking, pick a bit from here, a bit from there, a bit from there, will that create a good homogeneous law? It's a debatable point. Secondly, the current situation is purely political. The call of a UCC or a common civil code is a dog whistle. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay, let's ask Rajiv Pandey then. Rajiv Pandey, where is your UCC plan and draft?
Tanvi, first you have told me to wait more than 25 minutes and the issue is going on. I want to make 3 quick points. Taslim Rahmani ji is saying that why one country, one tax. Taslim Rahmani follows one Khalifa, one book for the whole world, not about the country. So Taslim Rahmani is this point that why one country, one tax. I am unable to.
Please, come to the debate. We all are conducting. We all the panelists are
conducting.
No,
what are you
very
talking? One Khalifa.
Debate.
You have started Khalifa movement in this country. Now again you are disturbing me. I waited patiently. Mr. Rahmani, for Khalifa movement you did a lot of drama in this country.
See, Mr. Rajiv Pandey, this is why, Mr. Rajiv Pandey, this is why I take time to come to you, because I know you will say something provocative which will rile up other guests and my debate gets derailed.
What provocative I said?
No, don't. Let's stick to the point.
Did I say anything
Let's stick to the law.
In this country, Khalifa movement has taken place or not?
That is not the point of the debate today. Please go to channels who want to debate there and debate it there. Do you have anything to say, Rajiv Pandey, on the issue we're discussing today? And where is the uniform civil code? One minute, Dr. Rahmani. Exactly why I didn't want to come to you in the beginning. I didn't want this debate to be derailed. I will not allow it even now. Yes. Where is the uniform civil code?
No. Tanvi, as early as in 2019, Honorable Supreme Court of India has said that states should endeavor to bring UCC. And I am telling you, this government will try its best. And whatever Mr. John Dayal has said, all these things will be discussed, debate, and this government will try to bring UCC. You have seen, but whatever is the petition filed today before Honorable Supreme Court of India is not about the UCC. It is about their fundamental rights. That's why they have gone under 32. Under 32, triple talaq law was annulled. Under 32, many things have happened in this country. So right now, you are talking about the today's development in the Honorable Supreme Court of India and you are bringing UCC. We are for UCC, for consultation. After consultation, UCC will be brought. I am telling you, whatever BJP has talked about the issues, all issues are slowly coming on to the fore. But what I am trying to say, just John Dayal has said it is a political issue. What has to do with politics? Triple talaq was not a political issue. Same way, the ground of divorce, they have challenged, the Pinky Anand's client has challenged. It is not the political issue. Let Honorable Supreme Court of India analyze that whether it violates the fundamental rights or not. Why? What for we are opposing? Today Taslim Rahmani is saying that government should bring after consultation. Of course, this UCC, whenever it will come after due consultation, and whatever Mr. John Dayal is saying, that all the good things will be brought from all religion, and it will be religion neutral, it will be gender neutral, and it should be brought, because in the whole world it is happening. Like in Canada you can see, and even in India, in Goa it is there is no problem. But Tanvi, whenever UCC discussion has started in this country, who are the people who are opposing this?
Allows
Who are
Hindus.
the people who are opposing UCC?
Allows
One
Hindus.
minute, John,
Who
okay,
are the
John
people
Dayal wants to
opposing
say
UCC?
something. John Dayal
Now,
wants
the
to
moment
say
I
something.
talk, you are saying you are raising the issue.
Not mislead people. Goa Civil Code allows bigamy for Hindus. Do you know that?
Well, that may be an idea which everybody may want to adopt. Otherwise, you have this.
As
thing
long
of,
as
you
that's
know,
also
self-
gender neutral.
Yeah, that could be one idea. The other idea could be that you can if there is a child marriage, we can just abandon the marriage and walk away. We have precedents that way also. So please do not get into what you all do not know and start simply legislating off the top of your head. The last two big pieces of legislation, whether it's the CAA or the farm bills, have ended up in people on the roads. You want more people on the roads, or do you want to run a country?
No. Mr. Hegre, you can say anything, but the country has supported CAA bill. Country has supported even farmers bill. You do not watch TV or you do not see the elections. The people like you who are having pathological hatred, they are unable to understand the law. Are you aware about the CAA? Supreme Court has said that it is annulled. You tell me, you have brought CAA now. I am saying the CAA it is being argued before Honorable Supreme Court of India. What is your problem? What is your problem in CAA? You don't want Christian, Hindus, Parsi who are suffering in Islamic State of Pakistan, Bangladesh and Afghanistan to come to India and get citizenship. You are bringing all these things. Who are you?
Okay, now.
First you tell me.
Mr.
Who
Sanjay
are
Hegde
you
has
to
also
decide which bill
successfully
has to be
provoked
legislated?
Rajiv
It is
enough
the
to
parliament is going
derail
to
this
decide.
conversation. Okay, may I just come back? Mr. Sanjay Hegde, coming back to the hearing that took place today in the court.
No, CAA, you are bringing
Even the
people
judges
who have
and
nothing
the
to do with all these
three-judge bench,
things.
even the three-judge bench today was a little cautious, and they made it very clear that with caution they are going to proceed here, issue a notice to the centre, because it's the issue of stepping into personal loss. Now, why is that? Have there been cases in the past, where courts have decided to stay away from personal loss?
Let me tell you. Somebody else mentioned Shabanu earlier. Shabanu was the application of the Criminal Procedure Code, which provides for maintenance of wives and to avoid destitution. While interpreting that and applying it across the board, the court also invoked the directive principles of state policy in the Constitution, saying common civil code and various things. And that led to a huge movement, that led to a law to annulling, which also then led to various other things, which ended up with the BJP coming to power. To cut a long story short. But my simple point to Mr. Pandey and to everybody else, I haven't even said anything. Why do you put your hand up? So the simple point is this. You may have the lawmaking power, but you also need to have wisdom to use that power. You can't continually use it in a way that the country gets derailed. Each time, like a jhatka, every morning you get up and say that, oh, I have a nice idea. Let me pass an ordinance. Let me pass a constitutional amendment. Let me take away things in Kashmir. Let me start CAA. Let me start farm this one. That is not how you run a country. You run a country by taking along everybody on board. And the last point before I finish, I wish the Supreme Court had only asked Mr. Ashwini Upadhyay, the petitioner, How are your fundamental rights breached? Do you want a triple talaq? Do you want to remarry again? Do you want a second marriage? How are your fundamental rights breached?
Okay, okay. That's an interesting question, Mrinali Deshmukh, but on the larger aspect of personal laws and courts really getting into
Just
there,
30
or
seconds,
should we leave it to
just
the
give me 30 seconds
legislation?
to respond.
No, I will come
Tanvi.
back to you. Let her speak. She's yet, to make a point in the last many minutes. So I want her views as well on the question that I asked Sanjay Hegde.
Sorry, will you let me know what your question is?
Yes, the question was that, the courts today again said that they're going to proceed with caution because when it comes to intervening in personal laws, it gets a little tricky. Now, why is that?
See, because that is the basic structure of our legislation. Now, right from the time when the Hindu Code was made in the year 1955, 54, 55, and the various laws, etc., came up. So these are personal laws, and we are very emotional people. We are very sensitive about it. So the point here is, without any trampling upon the sentiments, the emotions, the beliefs, and the custom that is been going on, and at the same time to bring about a balance where there is gender equity, when there is uniformity which is there, and any kind of arbitrariness is removed from it. So somewhere the courts will have to strike a balance between the two. It's not a very easy decision, it's the ticking the boxes and saying yes or no, which is there. Secondly, and more importantly, it is that obviously it can make a very vociferous sort of suggestion to the legislature to bring this about, to make it a law, or consider these points. They can give their own views on which the legislation can then sort of ruminate and think what is to be done. This is not going to happen in a day or two. It is going to take some time. But unless there is a beginning made, and as I said, and there are people, panelists here who owe their allegiance to some political agendas. I'm not here for that. I'm just as a lawyer who's been practicing this law for the last 15 to 20 years, and who have seen these difficulties in the course of my practice, more particularly for the women litigants who are there before the courts. So having said this, I think this is going to take some time. Maybe the courts might say they'll set up a committee to take views, as the panelists has also stated. Nobody is saying that let's pass a law tomorrow and let's make it something that comes into effect tomorrow. Yes, we have to take everybody into consideration. It has to be very inclusive in its nature without hurting the sentiments of any particular religion, because that is the ethos of our laws. It is the ethos of our country. And that is the sterling quality of our country, unity in diversity. So having said these things, which is there, I'm of the belief, why not think about it in a more balanced, neutral manner? Dump the political agenda of whichever party it is. We do not want to bring politics into it. Just let's look at it from a legislative policy.
Okay.
The women's point is where I'm coming from, and that is why my views are what I have just expressed earlier.
Which is what I'm going to take and to wrap up this conversation as well. Mr. John Dell, I'm really sorry, but I'm out of time. I am very sure we're going to have lots more of these conversations, and we'll have all of you panelists back as well, because the court has just about started and issued notices to the government. We are yet to find out what the government will say. Mr. Pandey, we'll find out what the government has to say in court, and I will call you back on this debate, and then you can make more points for sure. I promise you that. But thank you so much for joining us tonight on this conversation, because there is no denying the fact that within the personal laws, there are a few which are still problematic. Laws, rules which probably made sense decades or centuries ago, but in today's day and age, they don't. Where right to equality and liberty should be the same for everybody. Now, that's not to say that I have a problem with the fact that we have a Hindu Marriage Act, we have a Special Marriages Act, we have an act under which if you're going to marry a foreigner, then you have to get registered under that act, or if it's an interfaith couple, that's a Special Marriages Act. We have various of these versions existing right now. That's fine, as long as each of those laws that govern these parts of our lives, the personal parts of our lives, whether it's inheritance, whether it's marriage, whether it's divorce, or even alimony and maintenance, as long as all of the laws are equal and same for both genders, all genders in fact, and across the religions, they are not discriminatory. Triple talaq, for instance, the way it was being practiced in our country did put the women at a disadvantage, was discriminatory against women. Similarly, if there are problematic parts, even in the other existing laws, maybe it is time for the legislation, for the governments to look at it. Let's wait and watch what the Supreme Court has to say and how it deals with the issue. But just like the Supreme Court, I think we should proceed with some caution. This is not to demolish the diversity in our laws for different religions, the freedom people have to practice their own faith and those rules. But this is to ensure that we get rid of bad laws. Thank you so much for joining us on this conversation.